going on, everyone? Welcome in, welcome in. What's going on, Gabe? What's going on, Harsh? Welcome in, guys. What's going on, El Lobo? What a hell of a day, I will say that. I think every day has actually had some kind of interesting turn in its own way. Definitely, I expect a wild, pretty much end to the week here. Welcome in, guys. So welcome in. Those of you just stepped in, welcome in. Tonight's gonna be kind of brief. I don't think there's gonna be too much that I can go over or pretty much put on the watch list per se. So that's why, as you see, I was expecting today's price action pretty much went more so as I expected, because I did tweet out. I pretty much said it on live pretty much early in the morning, and I was expecting SPY to pretty much be at 450. I expected this kind of range, and then some kind of late day, whether it's gonna be that gap up into SPY over 451 or we get the meltdown. So market did choose the meltdown. It pretty much forced everyone to think that the market was going to continue that meltdown into the end of the week. And I'm just hoping that no one ended up swinging puts. Because if you swung puts overnight, and you've heard me as a broken record say, do not swing, then you pretty much just got annihilated here tonight. And there's no coming back from that, especially if you have tomorrow's expiration and you're holding puts. I literally don't even know what to tell you right now. And that's literally what it's been for the past few weeks since volatility has started. If you get on the wrong side of your swing overnight, you pretty much realize that the market has not been very nice to that. The trend, when we pick a direction in the trend for the day, it's literally been pretty strong, in the sense that your opposite opposing position goes literally wasted. And that's really been the bigger problem. That's why I've already had the mindset of not really swinging positions. I've pretty much been stressing that, and that's why I say, if you have puts tonight, rest in peace, pretty much, because you see what we're pretty much, um, all that after hours debacle. There was one point where we saw there was some kind of breaking news out of Market Rebellion. They reported some kind of stock split that ended up being pretty much false. I think they actually took down the tweet that they had, but despite all of that, Amazon literally just went full steam ahead. I think everyone was pretty much loaded on puts. We all had the mindset that Amazon was probably going to go down more so towards 2,500 than breaking the 3,000 mark. And that's pretty much, you saw the market just flip switch on us. And I didn't think the earnings was that impressive compared to the last earnings. Yes, they're going into advertisement business and it is larger than, say, YouTube. They also they guided down. That was also another part that I was like, okay, so they guided down, but the stock is gonna rip over 300 points. They're pretty much, their overall revenue was about 9% year over year, which for Amazon wasn't too impressive than what their last earning was. So it startled me just a bit in terms of seeing that just run as much as it did. I really thought it was more so when I first saw that massive gap up. I'm like, all right, fine, it has to be a stock split. They followed right into the shoe of Google, but it wasn't. So it left me a little flustered. In which, why did we see such a big move? We literally just moved down 200 something points today, just to go back up 300 plus points. So that's pretty much been the market, in which, welcome to volatility if you haven't realized. Some very exaggerated moves. We saw what Snapchat did. I think it was up like about 60% after hours on Snapchat. I do believe that was actually warranted just because of how much Snapchat has actually died. But the fact that they're up that much in just one single day here, this after hours, that was just insanely crazy, up 60%. Then you also had pins that went bonkers also. I think that one was due for it. We saw it pretty much got punished and punished, especially after they had the news with PayPal that pretty much ended up being a fallout, ended up being fake. So those two names I can understand. The pins and the Snapchat, they warranted some kind of rebound, but the pretty much the excessive move that we got at this after hours pretty much just had me scratching my head, and that's the bigger part about that. So I think it's just pretty much setting us up for a bigger downfall. It's just that what pretty much the perception is, then you have to think about the market as a casino right now, is that everyone had such a bearish mindset, and there were so many puts that were pretty much just coming through the tape. And I'm pretty sure you heard Avery saying that for most of the day today also. is that once you favor one direction, we can't all be paid out. The casino is not going to pay out everyone that favors one direction. And that's really what you see is that we pretty much all got whipsawed. All those buyers that were pretty much loading up puts, you literally just got whipsawed and it took out your premium completely. So I expect us to continue to grind up. We do have data tomorrow morning. So be aware of that. We have the job numbers that are coming out tomorrow morning, non-farm payrolls. So we'll see what that ends up doing. I don't believe that's going to end up tanking the market in any way or fashion tomorrow. I think at best we probably get maybe about a 60% retracement off of this little gap up that we had after hours, plus futures pretty much just mooning. But over and all, we've seen it earlier in the week where we pretty much had this kind of gap up, as you see futures right now, and we retraced with futures only up about 40 points, Nasdaq futes, and then we continued the rally going up. So I would expect that to end up happening of some sort, and that would be ideal for those of you that like to pretty much buy the dip and then rip, and that will play out perfectly right into a 0 day scenario tomorrow. So I would love to see that end up happening, get a nice little dip and rip tomorrow, and then everyone can pretty much have a nice trend day in which we get some beautiful fluidity out of some call positions. So that'll be the point that I pretty much wanted to make here as far as that. But overall, I think no, I should say that I am still overall bearish in the market, uh, but it may not end up closing out like that this particular week. So we see there's pretty much just positive sentiment after what Google did, after what Amazon just did. It really just seems like the market's going to close out on a positive note despite whatever the job numbers are tomorrow. I expect us to close out on a positive note. And we see that we're pretty much going to likely get some kind of sort of recovery out of Facebook. As we see, it's going to continue to probably trend up just a bit and it'll weigh on pretty much on tech. But you see, Amazon's going to take that weight for it. It's going to continue to carry the cues. We see Google's going to continue to carry the cues. So we have a lot that's going to end up lifting up the weight despite the weakness that we see pretty much, I want to say more so out of Netflix and Facebook for that matter. All right. So pretty much wanted to point that out. Just getting caught up on what you guys just mentioned. Short selling stock is risky. Okay, so some internal conversation. So pretty much getting into what I was going to look at with SPY and pretty much give you the insight of why I say it's going to be pretty much a strong trending day. We do have SPY pretty much sitting at 451.32 once after hours closed. So we're quite a bit the way up about 1% after hours once we concluded, in which you see this nice little V-shaped recovery. Nice little hammer that we put in. And so what I anticipate is that we're going to likely end up trending towards this gap fill. So gap fill is going to end up starting here at 452.82. I think we blow through that with ease. And then tomorrow will be the deciding factor is if they end up trying to keep us under that gap fill, in which I say we're going to get an early morning pullback. And then we get a nice little trend day going up right back into the gap fill to retest it. But if we end up blowing past this gap fill and we break over 452.82, I think it's almost a done deal that the market's just going to go full blown, excessively mooning, and we're going to end up filling this gap, which will complete at 456.87, and that'll complete the entire gap down that we had from this morning. So that's what I would anticipate. That'll likely pretty much set us up possibly to test the prior gap fill that we have back from January 18th. So that's another gap fill that we have that'll pretty much push us towards 459.96. And then I would anticipate that ends up being our overall resistance. Now, does it have to be? No, because that wouldn't necessarily be the top of the channel that I have drawn here. So, but 459 would be the spot where I likely start to scale into puts, just to give you pretty much a forecast because I won't be here tomorrow evening on Friday to give you my insight as we pretty much likely rip tomorrow. But I would likely start to scale in on spy puts once we get to this 459 level. We start to breach over 459. That'll likely be where I start to scale into the puts. And of course, you want to get further expiration. But again, if you're going to end up swinging puts, you definitely need to be aware of this whipsaw action. Especially like you pretty much seen us go up and down this past week. One day up off of Google, one day down with Facebook, one day up with Amazon. The good thing is though is that all the mega cap tech stocks are pretty much done reporting their earnings. So we should see a better fluidity once we get up into this range, that 459, 460 range on SPY and then we'll be able to determine whether we're going to get a nice further breakout over the gap fill or into the gap fill completing at 463, or if we end up rejecting right around that 459, 460 level. All right. So that's pretty much my forecast looking into SPY. But I think it's safe to say that, granted the fact that after hours went up, futures are still pushing. I don't think job numbers are really going to hold us down or pretty much reverse this to the downside as bears would anticipate, I should say, for a better term. All right. The other thing I was pretty much just going to take a look at was just looking at the earnings that pretty much went out today. One thing that I actually already had charted out was Amazon. I didn't necessarily take a position Amazon. I mean, I've been pretty much trying to play by discipline in which I'm trying to avoid earnings more so. And I kind of knew that Amazon was gonna likely breach that 3K mark, but I did not expect this kind of move over 300 points. But as you see, I pulled out the monthly chart in which you have this nice little ascending broadening action, but then you have the smaller degree little megaphone action. And as you see, we pretty much wick down from the beginning of January. We wick down to the bottom of the support of the megaphone, and we pretty much just teetering right around the support level. And we ended up having a chance to pretty much blow through it right into support yet again and tap that, but the market just didn't let it end up happening. We also saw, and Avery pointed out, was there's quite a bit of volume, in which the last time that we ended up having this amount of volume on Amazon, there was pretty much a large gap up. That was also the same thing that he ended up pretty much pointing out as well. I know he posted on his Twitter for those of you that really want to see what he was really looking at, because I didn't take a look at it too much, but he did identify some kind of volume in prior history in which it looks similar to what the action was currently this past week to a month, I believe it is, and that ended up causing a nice little influx into the stock going higher. So but overall, just to give you the levels that I was pretty much watching, is that I was watching this going into 3185 to 3190. That was one of my first levels I was watching. And then the second level I was watching was towards 3363 is the next level I was watching. So if Amazon really wants to continue running, it's currently sitting at 3172, right below my first target here of that 3182-ish. Then if we continue to break beyond that 3185 level, you can likely see is heads towards 3363, and that'll be my second PT on this off of Amazon. So we probably see it wick a lot higher. I think once the initial ramp up that we had after hours, I believe it was well over 3,200. So it's entirely possible that we see a beautiful continuation of this. May not all be tomorrow. If the market continues to hold up going into next week, we can see even more continuation on Amazon. And we also have Google pretty much following right behind it, as they will likely lead pretty much the tech sector for right now. What's going on, Danny? So beautiful little levels. Hopefully that pretty much gives you a better idea. But 3185-ish, that's the first PT. Next PT I'm looking at was 3363 was the next one I was looking at. All right. The other one was Pins, and Pins actually had a beautiful move also. It was nice to see Pins actually finally get some kind of rebound. And those of you that are not aware, Thomas actually called this one out for his 2022 pick of the year, pretty much, in which you see the little competition that we have going on. So a beautiful sign just in general to see this one actually get a recovery, because they literally beat this one down. And I remember ever since that PayPal news that ended up being fake, they literally just destroyed this. And off of the monthly here, you can see literally just nothing but red candles. They annihilated it. But if we do get continuation, it's currently sitting at just under 30 mark. We can get some beautiful continuation. I have resistance sitting right around the 36 mark. So I would continue to stay long on this one. We likely get continuation towards that 36 mark, and that'll be a beautiful one. Uh, I wouldn't say to necessarily continue beyond the 36 mark. Just be cautious, more so because of the volatility, not because of the overall reversal that we're going to get. So try to stick to a PT. If you're trying to go long, more so, and I'm saying more than a few months out, then yeah, of course, if you want to load up on shares here, I don't mind that. If you want to get leaps, I think also a good spot. But I would expect that once you likely hit this 36 mark, you're likely going to get some more volatility in which you'll pretty much get a reversal. So for short-term positions, you pretty much want to stick to a specific target, and 36 would be my target personally. All right. Other one was Snap, and actually remember Snap. I would actually trade this so much. I think I had it on the newsletter. Those of you that remember when we had the early bull run, and I would literally have this on the newsletter. I think literally out of a month, it was probably on there maybe about twice of the month, just because of how fluid the movement was once we took off. And I pretty much left it on the monthly here because as you see, we had this nice little curling action on the bottom here. We had the beautiful breakout, and ever since around us August mark of 2020, that was when we had that beautiful earnings, and we saw the stock just take off with this entire COVID rally. But I was expecting to pretty much retest this mid 23 mark. Earnings pretty much just felt pretty much about $1 up. It held it, and we had a nice little reversal here. So I'm getting a nice little target here. My target right now is about 47.70, close enough to that mark. 40. I want to say, if you want to say ballpark, 48. If you want that round number, just to remember, 48 will be that level that I'm watching off of the continuation. I did want to see what was it currently sitting at. She's sitting at 39. So beautiful at 39. I think about another $9 move you could squeeze out of Snap. Just the fact that she's up 60% after hours, though, is just it's mind blowing. But 47 will be the mark that I would 47, 48 will be that target that you want to play this one up to. So get a nice little continuation. But again, I would expect this to be a short term target as you want to avoid the market volatility. Unless you are really going long term on this one, in which you have a long term portfolio, shares, leaps, then of course, by all means, I don't mind that. Maybe get look for maybe a dip, more so before you try to get in right at open if you're trying to go long term on it. Otherwise, if you're just playing the $9 move right into the target of that 47, 48 mark, that would be beautiful. All right. Other than that, I think those are the three that I'm more so just watching continuations. Of course, we would expect pullbacks. Granted, the fact that all of these moves so far have just been exaggerated after hours. They're all up. I mean, the percentages are insanely crazy. I even saw it being reported on CNBC. The price action after hours. Some of them are saying that it's really not warranted. Not because of the fact that the companies are not pretty much the earnings didn't deem it. It's just the price action itself and this market volatility. It was very much exaggerated, is what they pretty much were implying. So we'll see what that ends up doing. I'll look for some dips on those, and then we'll see if we end up getting a nice little push. But those are the overall targets I'll be looking at if we do get continuation. My only fear is that again, with after hours action up so much, then futures are already pushing. I think Nasdaq is already up over 200 points, and then combine that with the job data tomorrow morning, we are likely going to see some kind of swing. Either we're going to end up giving up quite a bit of our gap up, or we're gonna just continue to moon before the market opens. So that's one of my concerns that I'll be worried about in the morning, but I'll be waiting for the job numbers to really then analyze what my levels are, and then I'll be able to really call that out on live, and I'm sure Avi's gonna be watching that as well come tomorrow morning. All right. Someone said to take a look at shop. Take a look at it. Isn't that the one that was actually up about $50 this afternoon at Lobo? I believe it was up about $50, if I'm not mistaken. Someone mentioned that. Actually, it may have been Tatum that mentioned that. Wow, it's actually up 61.56 after hours. Jeez, they really sent that thing flying. Let's see. Probably at the daily looks a little better. I want to say. See what she's currently sitting at. So she's at 871 right now. So if I draw a trend line just sitting where she's at right now, let's get a trend line right across. So right across, close enough. So she's actually right over the gap fill that we had. Gap fill actually completed at 864. She's sitting just above the gap fill. Excuse me. She's sitting right above the gap fill. So if we do get continuation, and let me peep the levels that I have off of this one real quick. Off, see where our next pivot levels are that I have. So sitting at 871, levels that you're going to be targeting here. She's going to cross the 9-day moving average off the daily here at 886.63. That's going to be one of the first levels that you're going to watch. Make sure she crosses over the 9-day moving average. Once she crosses that, then we're going to end up hitting some resistance. I do have a pivot point at 894. And if she crosses 894, I think it's going to be likely a slingshot towards 971. and I know a lot of buyers are going to be stepping in to want to see this back at the 1K mark. All right, but those are levels I'll be watching off of shop. Of course, you do not want this. You want it to hold over the gap fill here. So support being right around 864. You want to see it pretty much hold that level, and then you'll be able to get that nice continuation to the upside. All right. Someone also mentioned NU. I have not looked at NU. NU Holdings. Let's take a peep at this. All right, so we got a small cap name here. So one of the biggest things I will say off the daily, pretty much identified right now, is that you have a defined downtrend. That's one of the biggest things that you pretty much want to identify. So you have a defined downtrend. So until we end up breaking that downtrend, I, me personally, I would stay sidelined unless there's some kind of catalyst that you're aware of. But level wise, I would want to see this if you're trying to play it right into the resistance yet again, which is around right around 740. Then you pretty much want to see this get over 719 would be the mark that you want to play this over. She breaks over 719, then you can go long, go right into the resistance here of 740. But you definitely want to see it break over 740. She breaks over 740, then you're likely watching 863 will be your next target on NU here. But I would presume that you are likely playing this more so because there's potentially some kind of catalyst. That would be my assumption. All right. But that'll be the levels I'll be watching. Someone also said Netflix. I've not looked at Netflix after hours. That's actually one I did not look at. What did it do after hours? Is it actually up or not? Let's take a peep. She's up about $7. So she is splashing some weakness. I was actually expecting it to be up quite a bit more. But I'll take a look, see what our levels here are on Netflix. So again, she's sitting at 413 right now. You do have a pivot point sitting at 421.81. It's going to be a pivot point. That's definitely what you want to watch. Over that pivot point, then she's going to take out another resistance at 429.26. Over the 429.26, your next level that you're watching, which will likely be your second PT, would be 438.03 will be your next level. So those are levels that you'll be watching on Netflix. Again, if we do have a strong trending day tomorrow, you will likely see this one get a little bit more recovery, and so you could play this one up to those resistance levels. But definitely, as you hit those resistance levels, especially being if you do have 0 days, if you may be holding a position already, take profits as you hit those resistance levels. All right, so that'll be one thing that I pretty much just want to advise you of. Someone also mentioned shop did go over 900 after hours. I can't blame it. I mean, I'm not surprised that it's actually up $60, and I won't be surprised if she actually pushes close enough to the 1K mark. Shop is literally one of those names, and I think this is one that I'm actually more at fault. Is that I will look at shop at night, but once the market opens, I tend to usually forget about shop, and the next thing I know, I'll look back at it probably about an hour or two later, and she's already just ripped. So I do have to get in the habit of actually looking at shop more often. I think more so since I'm more used to looking at just the mega cap tech names like the Apples, the Microsoft, Facebooks, and Netflix and all that. Shop kind of falls right out of that list. So I may have to actually add shop on the list. But I know that shop usually ends up paying. That's usually one of the big winners. But the only bad part about shop is that, especially with the premiums and the liquidity that they have, is that if you're on the wrong side of shop, that will be very costly. That's just one thing and that's from prior experience that I'm saying that. All right. I'm gonna look at the last two that you guys pretty much put up there. Lucid. I'm always looking at Tesla, so KVSM. If you want to hear about Tesla, I'll pretty much mention it on live tomorrow. But I want to see what it ends up doing tomorrow. I think right now the heavy resistance is around like 920 or something, off the top of my head, 922. But I'll be able to give a better idea of that once I see a gap up tomorrow. I know it's up about $11 after hours, I think it was. Looking at Lucid, and wow, this chart looks horrendous. Lucid pretty much is just in a never-ending decline right now. I don't see a reversal that's in place, so that's the first thing that just stands out to me. So I will say that there is very much a defined downtrend on Lucid, so you do want to be aware of that. Let me take a look and see what the levels are on Lucid that I'll be watching for. If you were trying to play this back to the upside, she will certainly need. Actually, let me see what she did after hours before I say, because I did not look at after hours. She's up 85 cents. All right, so pivot point that I have on Lucid, 28.26. That definitely needs to break. If she can crack 28.26, next target I'm watching is 29.58, and then 30.56. Those are the three levels that you'll be watching on Lucid. So pretty much play it level by level. That's basically what you want to do right now, especially in this environment, especially with these erratic movements. Take it level by level, and that's why I kind of want to make sure I give you guys those levels. Not more so, and as you see, it's pretty much just a defined downtrend. That's the bigger picture. So there's not too much to say, oh, it's going to reverse at this point, because you're way off of what the reversal zone will be here. So that's just something I wanted to point out for you. And then the last one I'll look at would be ATVI, Activision. And the last time I actually looked at Activision, it has not moved. And this is actually one I did have charted out. Look at that. Did not notice that. So I had a nice little falling wedge action. Did not even know I had this charted already. But it does have a nice little falling wedge action. As you see, it's pretty much out of this falling wedge. It hasn't even picked a direction. So this one's even harder to say where it's headed to, just because the price action is just so flat that it pretty much is not giving me an indication of where it's headed. There's no direction right now. I want to see maybe if they have earnings coming up. Let me take a peep. No, they've already had earnings. So there's no catalyst that's per se that's going to end up making this pick a direction. And I will say that gap fill below is very scary. But if we can get a nice little move right back over 79.15, that may be a spot where I maybe scale in for a call position. Her resistance will be sitting at 79.59. And then she'll need to also take out 79, 79.79 will be the move that she'll need to take out. So that'll be the levels, but honestly, I would not touch Activision just yet. I would wait for it to pick a direction. I mean, there's clearly just nothing here. To me, this is just flatline right now. So I would not even bother taking a position right now. All right, Chris, I know you're pretty much pretty heavy probably in Amazon, but hopefully that ended up paying. You said 3K. I'm assuming those are calls, Chris. But if it is calls, congrats. All right. Tatum and I took the 1K lotto on shop for tomorrow. El Lobo, I'm not gonna lie, I actually think that's gonna end up paying out. That was a beautiful sympathy play playing off of Amazon. Although that could have went in both directions. Um, but I do like that sympathy play, so that was a beautiful one. I think that's gonna end up being a nice little payout for you, and definitely was a safer way in terms of playing Amazon's earnings. Nice little sympathy there. All right. But I think that'll probably wrap up tonight's session, guys. Again, we have job data tomorrow morning. Let me actually just double check the time real quick. I'm assuming it's 8:30. Yeah, 8:30 a.m. Eastern tomorrow morning. We'll see the job data come out tomorrow. I would anticipate that we get the nice little pullback, dip and rip scenario. Just be cautious of the fact that maybe we see like a repeat of earlier on in the week where we had a beautiful gap up, and then guess what? Once the market opened, we ended up retracing about near 80% of that move before we got the uptrend uh, right back. So just something to keep in mind. Just make sure to keep your levels on watch, especially those of you that are pretty much going to be in 0 day tomorrow. Be very cautious tomorrow because of the fact that we have such a big gap up. If we end up giving it all back, that'll be where I end up getting a little more concerned, because then at that point we can go a little bit more of either way. So that'll be more so of more of a concern to me. But if we get a nice little dip and then we see the confirmation that we're going right back north, which we'll likely end up catching that on live and we'll call it out, then hopefully that ends up being a beautiful, just a clean trend day tomorrow. And that'll be beautiful for 0 day plays tomorrow. All right, guys. Other than that, you said, do you see SPY pulling back further? I actually went through my SPY chart earlier. That was probably the first thing that I actually discussed. But if you actually take a look real quick, I actually have an ascending channel off of SPY. We're pretty much sitting right around 451. I would anticipate that we're going to enter the gap fill here on SPY tomorrow. Over 452.97, we'll enter a gap fill, and that'll complete at 456.87. So that will give us pretty much a beautiful range if we end up getting into the gap fill, and that'll cause our beautiful trend day north in the markets. But do I end up seeing SPY pulling back? Yes, I do. I just don't see it pulling back to close out the week here tomorrow. So that'll be a bigger picture. We'll likely see Avery pretty much give us an update on the newsletter over the weekend. After tomorrow completes, we see this uptrend kind of finish. then Avery will likely give us a projection of where he sees us getting a reversal, because I'm sure that's something that's going to be on everyone's mind, where we get all this exaggerated movement, but there's no way that we continue to go north. One thing actually I did not point out, also those of you that maybe pay attention to other metrics, is that if you actually notice, the 10-year bond yield today actually was north of about 1.8. So that was also something that was a little bit disturbing as well, that caught my attention. So I will look at that tomorrow morning, probably after the data, and see if we continue to rise on the 10-year bond yield. And that'll be something that maybe ends up catching my attention as well. So that's just something, side note, those of you that pay attention to other metrics here in the market, also paying attention to the dollar, which I didn't look at too much today. I'll likely see what that ends up doing after the job data tomorrow. And we'll see if that pretty much gives me an indication of where the markets are likely headed. All right, but I think that'll probably wrap up tonight's session again, guys. Hopefully, you guys pretty much just stay safe tomorrow. Be careful with the 0 day trades, and if you are gonna try and take long positions, I would suggest try to get yourself some time on those. Don't try to necessarily go into weeklies, especially with this market volatility. If you notice, if you get into to long calls, you end up noticing that once you get a red day, it takes some time to get that kind of recovery. So that's just something, especially with how erratic the day range is right now, the day to day range. That's just something to keep in mind. All right. But again, that'll wrap it up, guys. I'll see you guys on live tomorrow morning. And that'll wrap up the week. Hopefully, we close it out strong. And I will see you guys on live tomorrow morning. All right. Have a good night.